Loyalty and devotion lead to bravery. Bravery leads to the spirit of self-sacrifice. The spirit of self-sacrifice creates trust in the power of love. Norihe Ueshiba.
Bending Not Breaking, the Dragon Prince Edition. Season 3, Episode 9, The Final Battle. It's that time again. Welcome back to another episode of Bending Not Breaking. This is your host, Ben Pruitt, and I am so excited to have a bunch of guests today. Not just one, not just two, but three guests. And you've heard them all individually this season. But we wanted to come back together for this final episode and all have a conversation together. And we are really excited that we are going to put this out on our podcast feed, but we're also recording it, so we might put the video up for our patrons so that they can see the video as well. Note my hair on this for the patrons. It's not great. We'll see what happens. Anyway, welcome back to Rahul, Maggie, and Kelly. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Who's going first? Who's going to do it? Who's jumping?
I'll go first.
Yes.
I'm doing great. This is Maggie. So excited to be here. Let's go season finale.
Boom.
Woohoo, this is Kelly. Good to be back. Thanks, Rahul, for getting us all together.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that means I'm Rahul, and happy to be here. Excited finale.
Yeah, this is really exciting. So I had a guest lined up that fell through, and then I posted on our Patreon feed to see if there was a chance for any of our other patrons who hadn't spoken up. Didn't hear from them, so Rahul was like, what about a group episode? And then I was like, go for it. And then lo and behold, a couple of days later, I get everything that I need to know. So this is from the work of your patrons, and I'm just tagging along. So I'm really excited to talk about this episode. I'm not gonna lie, I just watched it again and I teared up like 4 times in this episode. I was shocked at how emotional I got because I haven't seen it in a while, and I was kind of blown away at how many times I teared up. Did y'all remember how emotional this episode was?
I had goosebumps like multiple times, just like shivers down my spine between like the scenes. I was like, this is epic. Like this, yeah. They're not messing around. Like the fights are so intense. Everything is so intense. All the emotions are so intense in this episode. I was like, is this for kids? Are we sure?
Yeah, that crossed my mind too. I was like, there are like people getting skewered over here. Like this is rough. Yikes.
It was really intense, but it was also really nice to go back because I watched it. The last time I watched the finale is when I binged it. So to go back like a year later and just kind of relive it all. And a lot of it I don't remember as vividly as I thought I did. So I was like, oh, I forgot about that. Oh my gosh. And then like every finale, I feel like they do this. They cram so much in 33 minutes. So I'm a little nervous for my recap because I said I would do the recap. And then I watched it and I went, what was I thinking? There's so much happening to recap in this episode.
Yeah, even if you were to not recap all the fighting, like which there's still scene to scene, so much going on. So I'm really glad that I don't have to do it this episode. But before we go to the recap, I want to kind of venture forth into the lens that we're going to be observing and viewing and discussing this episode through. And Rahul, you had the opportunity to kind of pick the lens. You all kind of divvied up roles, and this was your responsibility. So I'm curious, why loyalty? Why? There's a lot going on, so I'm curious.
I think what really stood out to me was loyalty around Viren, mainly with Aravos and Claudia, who are still on his side. And then we also see Soren sort of continue his struggle with his own loyalty to Viren versus loyalty to the crown as a protector of the king. But yeah, really, he has a conversation with Claudia in this episode that I found as soon as I heard that, I was like, okay, loyalty is top of my list now.
Fascinating.
But then, you know, as we've seen throughout this season, and then at the end, Aravos is a character that, you know, I've been sort of curious from day one of what his actual motivations are, because I would be very surprised if he actually is completely allied with Viren and it doesn't have his own ulterior motives.
Yeah. I very much think Viren is a pawn in this grand scheme of things. I think that also kind of speaks to the fact that it's season 3 of 7 planned seasons. So I think that we have the shorter arcs, but this longer arc is definitely going to be of Erebos. And I think the final battle will be with potentially Erebos. That's my theory anyway. Okay, so you've kind of selected the lens, and I'm curious for either Maggie or Kelly, when you think of loyalty, I'm curious what comes to mind. Like, what is it? We've unpacked it before on the podcast, but I kind of want to get you all's perspective since we're here and we're fresh talking about it.
I mean, when I was like watching the episode, especially after like thinking about, I was like, there's so many different types of loyalty. So then I was looking up, I was like, I'm going to Google types of loyalty. But of course, what came up was like customer loyalty and like business stuff. And I was like, okay, that's not really what I was going for. But I was just thinking about how there are many different types of allegiances, right? There's different ways to form those types of relationships. And some of those ways are good ways and some of those ways are bad ways. And I think you see that pretty, like, they lay it out pretty straightforward in this episode, ways to form positive loyalty and ways to form loyalty through other, maybe less positive means.
Yeah, for sure. I did recently some research on loyalty just to kind of prepare. And I was thinking about that, like, I came across this study where they brought in people and marked them as part of a group and then pitted them against one another. And so they had to sign an oath, a pledge. And people who signed the pledge when they were doing something innocuous were twice as likely to remain loyal if they signed that pledge than people who did not. However, when those groups were pitted against one another in competition, they were twice as likely to cheat or do the wrong thing because of their loyalty pledge. So who you're loyalty to and the goals of the conversation really dictate whether people are, that loyalty affects their ethics, essentially. And so I thought that was a really fascinating little study. And I'm curious how we'll see that play out in this episode, right? Maggie, anything from you before we move on, or?
You know, I think it's interesting that Kelly brought up how, because when I think of loyalty, I think automatically of like the consumerism and the capital side of loyalty. Because I think
brand loyalty.
Yeah, exactly. That's the main way we hear the word loyalty, right? Especially in this day and age, that is the first, thing that comes to mind. So I'm wondering if that's an important point to just kind of keep in the back of our mind, because we're not in the in age that the show is set in, where loyalty is like what side of battle you're on, right? Loyalty is more of a consumerism side. So I just think that's interesting. But at the same time, there's also, I think this episode does amazing things for showing how loyalty can be a good thing, but also can be manipulated into putting you into a situation that maybe you don't want to be into because you're not checking their ethics, or you're compromising your own ethics, right? So lots of good discussions. Rahul, good choice. Great job.
Well, I'm excited to get there. We're about to dive in, but before we do, Maggie, you have just so graciously volunteered also to do the 30-second recap. And I am just so pleased that I do not have to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 30 seconds on the clock. Are you ready?
We're just going to do it.
Great. 3, 2, 1, go.
Callum home still can't fly. Soren apologizes. They hug. Battle meeting. Rayla chooses to stay with Zim. Lots of fighting. Oh no, they're losing. But then the dragons come. But wait, fire strengthens the soldiers. More friends show up with jelly tarts. The tides are turning. They won. Wait, it was too easy. Viren tries to kill Ez, but then Soren stabs him in the heart. But it was a diversion. Viren was an illusion. Zim's in trouble. Rayla tackles Viren. They plummet off the cliff. Callum's love allows him to fly. The Dragon Queen awakens. Claudia raises Viren from the dead. Creepy.
And 30 seconds. That was remarkable. That
was so hard.
That was really good. I didn't think you were going to make it, but you did really good at the end.
Yeah.
For those that get to view it, here are my bullet points. I had to write it out.
Yeah, we have about 3/4 of a page there written out. There's a lot going on. Okay.
There's so much to talk about. So many good things.
Well, speaking of, let's dive right on in. Let's pick a moment. What's a moment of loyalty that we want to discuss? What's the first thing we're going to talk about?
I think we should just go straight to what Rahul brought up with that conversation between Claudia and Viren that kind of sparked, his lens, because it really struck me. What I noticed is that, Viren's thanking Claudia for her loyalty. And she says, well, of course, you're my dad. Like, of course, I'm going to, be with you. I wouldn't let anything break our family apart, because that's like her greatest fear, is for her family to be torn apart. And it almost struck me as like Viren was like kind of surprised by her answer. He was like, oh yeah, of course, family loyalty. Because I think he forgets that she's not just another pawn that is manipulated by other means, by fear or by power. Like, she loves him. And so I feel like her answer, like her just true, like pure loyalty, was like surprising to him. What do you guys think?
That's a great point. Go ahead, Rahul.
I was going to say, I also think it's pretty reactive to Soren leaving the previous episode, where now she feels like, Viren is my only family left, because Soren has me.
I think it's interesting that Kelly brought up how there's family loyalty, and I think that's a great point, because it wasn't necessarily the way I was viewing that scene. But then when you said that, Kelly, I went, oh, yeah, that definitely makes sense, because she is very loyal to Viren. And I think that loyalty, and we've talked about this before, is what's kind of blinding her to the reality of what her dad is trying to do. And like Rahul said, with Soren leaving, it's a blind loyalty, because she's just clinging on to whatever she thinks of family, even though you just look at Viren, especially in this episode, because he looks different in this episode from the last episode, right? So we're watching that change, that evolution of him happen into this like very scary creature and, character. So it's just interesting how that loyalty is blinding her.
Yeah, there's just so much wrapped up in this one moment that I just like, my brain is kind of spinning at all the directions we could go. And I think you all are pointing to stuff that's really important, because this has been Claudia's motivation from the beginning, is family, and this loving bond that she has with Viren and Soren, and family first, right? And then Viren is playing on that the whole time to keep her close. And that is ultimately what separates her and Soren, right? It's that moment in the prison cell where Viren laughs everything off, and then Soren's like, all right, we're done. And it just reminds me of that, and thinking about how when we are so loyal or so like yearning for something that we have previously been denied, I think we are willing to overlook some things in order to maintain that image. And it seems like that's what Claudia is doing at this point, is I'm willing to overlook all these bad things because I've convinced myself that this is what we need in this moment. And it just shows me how dangerous that can be, and how do we check ourselves? Where are the checks and balances that can help us get out of that lock that she is in right now? Because clearly it's not war. So I'm really curious, like what is the boundary line? Where does that happen? I have no idea. It's terrifying.
Yeah, I really wish that we got more of Claudia's kind of like inner feelings, because they really leave it like just on the surface level. Like you're trying to read her expression. And there's really no indication, like, I don't know, I didn't really see any indication that she's like weighing the stuff. She's just all in, like, she's just straight in. And she even kind of is overcome like later in the episode kind of by these like malicious deeds that she's doing, right? You know, she's like making fun of their defenses. She's, you know, willing to hurt anybody, you know, she like, you know, so it's kind of interesting, because I hope later that we'll see a little bit more of that conflict within her, because she starts out the series, I mean, season 1, as, you know, such a great, wonderful, positive person. And then by this point, we're not seeing really anything except that she is sticking to Viren with all her might. And we're not really seeing any of the underneath.
Yeah.
I wonder if she feels more loyal to him because they share a little bit of that magic component, and Soren is kind of left out, you know, because he is a soldier and he's more of a, right, they are the gifted ones and he is the ungifted kid. He's the non-bender of the bender group, right? That's an Atla reference. But I'm wondering if that's also kind of creating that bond that she's feeling with her dad over Soren. And I think maybe, I mean, like Ben said, we have 7 seasons, so who knows what's going to happen, since we're only at the end of season 3. Maybe she has a massive change that happens later on, but I think her character has so much development that's going to happen, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's good development, right? It could just be, she could be the villain at the very end of the story because she's capable, and we know she's really powerful, and we know that what her line was in season 1 is not the line that she has in season 3. At the end of season 3, the line doesn't really exist anymore.
Yeah, this reminds me of that interview with Aaron Eaz about Claudia, and there was a fan that asked, like, is Claudia redeemable after what she did in this episode? And like, let's be real and let's be explicit. She killed a guy to bring Viren back to life. Like, I think that is almost confirmed in everything, like all the. So like murder, right? And for to bring Viren back. And that's so the response was, of course she's redeemable, but it's going to get worse before it gets better. And to me, that's like, you know, Viren was bad. He just like took a whole army and turned them into monsters and literally went from human to non-human, I think, right? And a whole mess of people. And then Claudia treating the other army as if they were less than human, right? By like blowing them up, but also blowing up some of her own people and her own side in this like bomb that she blew up to take away the shield wall. So there's just a lot going on here that makes me really question, like, okay, like, sure, she can. I think we need to, again, when it comes to redeemability, like, just because you have seen the error of your ways doesn't mean that you have been held accountable for the error that you have committed. And there's a lot of accountability that needs to happen in order for there to be a redemption arc that makes me feel good about what has happened at this point. So I wonder, to meta a little bit, I wonder what the loyalty base of fans are to Claudia, and whether they see her that way also, right?
I do really appreciate you bringing up her saving Viren, because one thing that I definitely thought of was, well, I don't really know all of the lore surrounding dark magic and how much each spell like takes out of the user, but it seems like things that like save people's lives, or there are certain things that reduce your life force or reduce like your humanity, or something that, you know, are more significant spells. So we see Viren use a lot of these to sort of push his own sort of progress forward. The two that I remember we see Claudia use that are most significant are when she saves Soren and when she saves Viren.
The baby doe.
Yeah. And I think in both cases we see her hair change color, which is kind of like a visual marker of her paying the price. But I do think it's interesting that those are kind of the two major cases of Claudia going that far, where it's to save someone that she loves. I don't know where it would be now, but I compared to Viren, I think she's far less likely to use it for her own personal gain rather than, using it for someone she's loyal to.
Yeah. I think for me though, what is considered as love has evolved and has changed. Just like Maggie was saying earlier, that boundary in season 1 is very different than it is now. And I think when you are constantly pushing that boundary, you are also kind of manipulating your own like motivations and intentions, and are way more likely to talk yourself into doing something out of love, right? And again, I don't love the slippery slope analogy, but because it's false logic, and there's some truth to it. There's a reason we come back to it so often. But I don't know. This is tough stuff.
So I have a question to just kind of pose to you all and then also our listeners, because a lot of as we see the physicality change on both Viren and Claudia, and they become whiter, like their hair becomes whiter, they look a little bit more elvish. Did anyone else notice that with their transformation? And I think it's interesting. The reason I bring it up is because there's that saying, right? Like the more gray hair, it shows that you have wisdom, and yet you see them use it in a way that we wouldn't say they have wisdom, right? For the lines that they are crossing, right? We would not go, oh, that's a very wise person. So I think it's just this interesting juxtaposition, and I might just be reading into it too much, that the sacrifices that they make cause them to look a certain way, a little bit more elvish, but also older, right? So clearly they're losing either some of their life force, or they're becoming more in their roots or the elvish roots or things like that because of them playing with magic.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
When I went through the show the first time, and the first time we see Viren in his quote true form before he starts squashing butterflies or whatever they are, I thought he was an elf for a bit, and then I think it's confirmed that he's human, but I had a momentary and then I forget what kind of elf Aravos is, but I do think there's specifically there's a visual similarity in how they look.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I never thought of that. And especially because it's interesting that Viren was hiding, that true appearance, because if he is starting to look, more magical or more touched by magic, the humans who hate magic and magical creatures, right? Like who hate that, they're going to start seeing him as not one of them anymore, right? So I think it's also about like your appearance. We talked about in previous, like another episode about how your appearance, affects the people around you, right? And that if they don't think that you look human, they're not going to want to be on your side anymore. And Viren's very good about keeping people on his side, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing that's coming to my mind is I'm really worried kind of in this conversation, kind of putting all of the elves in one box, because like Moonshadow elves do have whiter hair, but we see a bunch of elves that do not, right? And so there's so many different types of elves. To say that they look more elvish is, I think, putting a label that, like, I when I first heard it, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But I was like, wait a second, like they look more like a specific type of elf. And so I think I hesitate to just kind of lump that in, but I see where the conversation's going also. And I think about, for me, I think it goes back to more, I think, what Maggie was talking about with when we age, our hair goes white, and we lack the nutrients and the things in our brains and the things in our skin that gives us the melatonin that changes it, makes it so that it comes out with color. And so white is the absence of color. And when I think about that, I think about Zadia, and I think about all of the color that is there, and how vibrant and beautiful, and all these different, literally rainbows everywhere. Zim's lightning is rainbow when it is going off in this episode. And so there's literally color everywhere. And then this dark magic is snuffing out life, and it's going white. So to me, white is more like, it's letting me know that death is closer. And so it has a very different thing for me in my head. And I don't know. That's what's coming to my mind when I think about this. Interesting. It's kind of like a loyalty to life, perhaps.
It makes me, what you said makes me hope that in season 4, we actually get to see the more different types of elves, because I was just thinking back how we got to see a couple types in the first 3 books, but there's more. There's more, types of dragons and more types of other, people that I think would be interested to see.
Well, Viren wearing white in this episode, I think, sort of fits into that theory, Ben.
Yep, sure is wearing a big old toga that looks white, a robe of some sort, very Jesus-y, one might say. Interesting how that happens.
Yeah, it's very strange. It has nothing to do with loyalty, but I find it to be very striking in a bad way. I feel like he should have a cooler battle outfit to go with his new look, but nope, just gonna rock the big white pajama. I'm like,
I'm all about comfort. That's all I'm saying.
Well, there is
what other?
Then
go ahead, Maggie.
That's okay. We're just going to stay on the robe for 1 second more, because I think it shows just what Kelly wanted to talk about. It shows that he's super confident that he's not wearing armor, right? Can we talk about that for a second? That he is so probably overconfident, right? That he is untouchable. He is beyond arrows. He's beyond swords. Nothing is going to hurt him because he has magic behind him, and he has Erebos and like all of these things, and Claudia is at his side, and he just goes into battle without any armor on, just in his ceremonial white robe, right? So I think that's a point that we should think about. Maybe not even, we don't have to discuss it, but just knowing that that's another state that he's in his mind, that he doesn't need to wear armor because he's above being injured. And then we see later on at the end of the episode that he is not immune to that, right? He dies.
Sure does. Super dead and then super not. I am interested in any fan theories around the purpose and the metaphorical symbolism of this robe. Please send in all things to thearkofe@gmail.com. We will read them. Okay, what's another moment of loyalty that we want to dive into in this episode?
I would like to bring up the one where Rayla chooses to stay with Zim and guard him up in the, what do we call it? The mountaintop. Is it it's their home, right? Dragon Cave.
The Storm Spire. It's called the Storm Spire.
Thank you. I was like, I know it has a name, but I couldn't think of what it is. Thank you, Kelly. Because I think that's a great point of loyalty, because I feel like there's a little bit of conflict where she wants to be with her friends, right? That loyalty to stay with the people that she's been with, but also knowing her loyalty is protecting the Dragon Prince. And correct me if I'm wrong, is this in their little battle meeting moment, right? That's full of comedy, like big speeches and stuff. Isn't that the first time we hear him referred to as the Dragon Prince? Like there is that moment where it pauses, or does it happen before then?
I all I know is that this is the moment where I started tearing up because Rayla, they used the word dragon guard specifically, and she like looks up and is like, oh, and I was just like, oh, she gets to do it, and I was just like, that's,
but they also specifically said the last dragon guard, not just dragon guard. They said the last dragon guard, which I felt that was one of the moments where I got goosebumps.
They all thought they were going to die. Let's be real.
So I read that there was an early script or something that they were also going to title Bait as a dragon guard. And like,
you should be.
Yeah, put some respect on my man's name. Like, come on.
Bait is the true hero. We love Bait. He's so good.
He is good. But yeah, I think that's especially after last episode where Callum helps Rayla uncover the truth of what happened to her parents and how they actually, did fulfill their promise, how they lived out their, their last moments, fighting until the end. I think that instead of last episode where it felt like Rayla was just kind of resigning herself to this fate, like to die, to basically just be like, to sacrifice myself just because basically I need to repent for what my parents did. This time it feels hopeful, right? It feels like this is what I want to do because it's what I believe is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And she's the one for the job.
That's so
I thought that was better.
Yes, and I still don't want people to just jump off cliffs. Forgive me for not wanting people to jump off cliffs, but like I think that it is her loyalty to this cause and to doing what is right that enables her to say, I'm going to push Viren off the cliff and I'm going with him because that was the one thing that will accomplish this, right? And I'm not sure that she had any other options at this point. To me, that's what makes this different, is the previous time where she was like, nope, time to die. I'm like, you have so many other options. Like, there are so many other things on your plate that are possible here. And this was a decision that was like, yes, I think it was not premeditated, but I think it was almost predetermined. I don't know what the right word is, perhaps, but I think she was willing to do this from the outset of starting. And when the time came, it was like, this is the only option. I got to do this. And I think that to me is why I'm not more squirmy about it. But I'm curious what other people's thoughts on this moment are, because I think loyalty is definitely what gives her the capacity to make this decision. But I'm also curious what you all think. Other thoughts?
I wonder if her loyalty, because she realizes also in the last episode what her parents did, that she's kind of resigned herself to as their child, right? Their heir, that it will be likely the same way that she dies. I know that sounds like super dark, but at the same time, we see her kind of absorb what happened and just kind of embrace that as this is my role. And maybe that is her being loyal to her role, right? But also to the overall story, right? Because we see Viren is taking the life force from Zim, and we know we need Zim. Really stressful moment, right?
Really?
Kid show. How is this a kid show? But I think in that moment, it's, she is one person, but she's not going to be the one, if she lives, that changes the fate of all of the nations, which again, sacrifice. How do you know it's the right time to sacrifice, especially when it's a life sacrifice, not just something that, you're sacrificing something of you, you're literally sacrificing yourself. But I wonder if, because of how everything happened with her parents, that she's also just more willing to have that just no hesitation, right? She sees what's happening and just goes for it, because Zim overall that's it. Zim needs to be okay.
Yeah, with that, I also think, before she found out the truth about her parents, it's very likely that she would have made a similar choice and gone in with the same, self-sacrificial kind of mindset. I think, if you were to ask Callum, that would be coming heavily from a sense of pride and sort of wanting to make up for her parents' failure. Now I think some of it may be, she knows how much her parents gave, and if she were to give any less than that, she needs to honor and be loyal to the image in her mind that she now has of them.
So that brings up my question, I think, which is, to what is she loyal, right? What is specifically she loyal to? Is it to Zim? Is it to Zadia and Zim? Or is it to this relationship with their parents? And it's convenient that they're talking to each other, right? And I'm curious, like, where the root loyalty is, right? Because you can be loyal to multiple things, but there's always going to be a hierarchy in a way where this is the thing that trumps all. And so I'm curious what that is, because to me, I think right now it's to this cause, right? I think that her parents, the fact that this whole relationship with her parents and what has happened before seems like that's secondary to the fact that she's been trying to work towards this for however long, right? Months. Thoughts on that? Does that ring true for y'all, or is there something else that you might see as kind of the precedent for loyalty here for her?
I think I agree. And I think based on what we're talking about in the previous episode, that it's almost like there's a shift that occurs. I feel like we're identifying this kind of shift in her mindset. And I feel like you could argue about when that exactly happens, but I feel like she was so driven by like loyalty to her people, right? To make up for what happened, to right the wrongs that her parents did. Like, she was so driven by that. But then once that was no longer like that's almost like the same, that was her motivator as well, right? That wasn't just her loyalty, but that was what kept her going. But after that was resolved, then she was able to like rearrange the hierarchy and have the cause be, her driving force, be the thing that, helped her to be brave, that helped her to make that sacrifice. So I feel like she changed it.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to pivot us to another moment of loyalty, if I may. I want to talk about Soren now, because this is a huge moment for Soren. Soren and Claudia, really, because they're both present for this. But, we see in the past episode or two that Soren calls Viren a villain. And I think when we are willing to go to that point, what we've done is there's I wonder if there's a little bit of dehumanization there, or like when they're to say somebody's a villain is pretty big, and I don't necessarily disagree. I think Viren is got like villain qualities, and still human. I guess it's a question like when you lose, depending on what he's losing, because we don't really know the nature of what he's losing. If he's losing soul, or if he's just losing like body, like we don't know what's literally being lost here, which is an interesting question, right? So is he becoming less human is potentially a question to ask, assuming he's not, and assuming he is like fully human still. Soren kills his dad. Or at least the image of his dad, and Claudia sees this, and it just creates this really interesting tension between the two. And I'm curious how this landed for you all. Like, where does the loyalty stand here? I'm open for thoughts.
I think it's a really difficult scene to watch because you get to see, for many reasons, right? Many layers to this. We could probably talk about this for the rest of the episode and not get into everything. But there's the moments where you see Soren really struggle with, because at this point, talking about Viren being human, but also that villain side of him, at this point, it looks like he's going to kill Ez, who is a child, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about on screen, looks like he's going to kill a child who is also the rightful king. And you see Soren go through this moment of, it's my dad. And he talks about how does he say the word loyal, right? Or something to I am to the crown, the true king, which is beautiful. But I don't think he wanted to, not that you would want to kill your father, right? But he makes that choice where I need to protect this child, but also the king. And he has that, he gets to that unthinkable point where he does stab his dad in the heart. But I love how we watch him have a physical reaction to that, right? Like he is shocked that he did it, that he was able to do it. And his hands are physically shaking. And you can see that it was really difficult for him to do that. So there's that conflict that we see within him. And also the fact that Claudia I understand that she's angry with him, but she knew that Viren wasn't real. So the fact that she allowed her brother to think that she made him choose, which I think was her point, to see if he was willing to come to their side, but that she let him believe for just long enough that he did in fact kill their father, right? You can see he processed it. I just killed my dad. And then it was an illusion, because then you see the moths or the butterflies that are there. So it was just, wow, like a whole minute and a half of just this emotional roller coaster that is so much to unpack.
Yeah, Viren died twice in this episode. And he's still alive. There's this is it's so intense. And I like this, the tone of Claudia's voice when she asks, how could you?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Like you could feel like kudos to Raquel. Incredible. Like, wow. Like I was like, I felt that one. That's just really tough. And I think this moment hyperbolizes, hopefully, the nature of how loyalties can pull us to extremes. And I think that when we have something that we're dedicated to, we are willing to kill for it. And I think that that's really scary. And I don't know that like Soren, I don't know that if you had asked Soren ahead of time what he would have said, if he say, hey, if you came across this on the battlefield, like what would be your plan? And I don't know how he would respond. But I wouldn't wish that scenario on anybody. That's so tough. Yeah. Really hard.
Yeah, honestly, I just felt angry. Like when Claudia is so like, I don't know if indignant is the right word, but she's like so like self-righteous about, like, she's like, how could you? And she knows, like, she just set him up because she wants to test him.
Well, even still, she may have known that Viren may or may not have killed Ezran, but we don't know if that illusion could actually kill Ezran or not. It seemed like he was very solid, right? And so Ezran was going to die, and she still had that livid loathing of Soren in this moment. I was like, okay, this is where it becomes visible how differently tracked they are in terms of what's okay and what's not okay. And I just find that fascinating. I find it fascinating. Terrifying.
I think that's partly also what makes the scene so difficult to watch the second time. Because the first time, you actually think that, or at least I actually thought that Soren killed Viren. And then it's revealed, and that's like another gut punch. Because then Soren went through this whole emotional ordeal for nothing. And then the second time, and then that impact is on another level, and then Claudia's reaction is on another level, because then you realize she knows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, gosh.
I mean, it's really the point where Soren's loyalty is like tested in a way that like no one ever hopes to see in their life. And I mean, up till this point, we kind of saw where he was going, right? We saw the trajectory of how, Viren was treating him and how Soren was let down again and again. And how that kind of caused, and he started seeing things more clearly when he wasn't under that like manipulation umbrella that Viren carries around.
Well, and we see him throughout the episode, he's talking like, oh, it's so good being on the good side of now for a change, right? Like being able to unchain things. And when we see this like apology with Callum, that's really beautiful, which confirms, I think, the conversation that I had earlier when I was talking in the Dragon Prince episode, when he was making fun of him and they were saying it's because of this. And it's like, yep, there it is. He just said it. But I digress. Continue, sorry.
And just that it's at this very moment that in this split decision, though, that like some people say like that's how he truly feels, inside his heart, because I feel like it could have not that it could have gone either way, but like if Soren had not been able to kill his dad, and then that fake Viren had like gone through Ezran, but then we find out it's an illusion anyways, like that would have still been devastating in its own way.
Yeah.
And I don't think it
because then Claudia would have been the one that killed him. Sorry. Right?
Yeah. Or like I don't think it necessarily would have changed like Soren's allegiance. Like I don't think he would have gone with Claudia, but I think that he would have realized that there's still something inside him that that can't hurt his own father. So it's kind of just messed up. It's all messed up all around.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's foreshadowing too, because we are only 3 seasons in, what Soren and Claudia are going to have to face off each other later on, right? There's going to be more conflict, but then there's probably going to be some sort of moment where they have to fight each other. And I'm just interested to see what that looks like, because we already saw their views coming from different ways, but I think it will be different for Soren because it won't be protecting necessarily a prince, right? Like to have to stand up to his sister later on. I hope it's done. I'm sure the writing is going to be gorgeous because it always is, right? But it's just, I'm excited to see the story, but I'm also anxious for the story because it's going to be hard to watch. It's going to be hard.
Yeah, they're not going to let us off easy, I don't think. Okay, I want to be mindful of time. I think if there's one more moment of loyalty that we haven't touched on that we really need to, I would love to hear it.
I just wanted to talk about unless there's other things too, but I just want to talk about how, especially when we have these two sides of this conflict kind of coming head to head, I wanted to explore, the idea of loyalty created by fear and loyalty created by, I don't know if love is the right word, but maybe hope. Because I just think that that has shaped, this conflict basically since it started, right? That Viren was manipulating all, the human side through fear of what will happen. He's so paranoid that, that the people from the other side of Zadia, like the elves and the dragons, are going to come and enslave the humans. They're going to ruin their way of life. They're going to kill everybody. They're going to come get revenge for what we did. He's just so fearful of the future and the unknown that he uses that, to kind of bring everyone to his side. But then if I kind of think of Ezran as kind of like the core of the magical side of Zadia, because I think at the end of the episode that it does solidify him as kind of the leader. Even the Sunfire elves are bowing to him. Everyone's bowing to him at the end, and how he really built their forces around love and hope and mutual care, and a decision that they wanted to take care of each other rather than continue with the fear from the past, right? Rather than continue bringing back what happened before. Yeah. What do you guys think?
I think that really makes me think of, there are all these soldiers that when Viren was saying, oh, we're gonna march on Zadia, a bunch of soldiers, threw down their swords and walked away, and he marked them as cowards. which then, after Ezran takes the throne, they were then designated as being brave for their actions because they stood by their own values rather than giving into fear and following Viren.
And we've learned their name, Marcos, come in and starts hanging out with the Sunfire Elf. They're hitting it off nicely at the end. But we see that, like, it's not because they were scared, it's because they didn't believe in the cause, right? And we knew that, but like we didn't know. But we now know that at least one left because, and we can assume and theorize that there were probably everybody else that left probably joined up to fight against Viren in this situation. So I think that's kind of a testament to the fact that people will use manipulation like Viren did to like build a stronger core, right? But the question is, like, is that really stronger, or is it might be stronger now, but it's also more brittle. It's easier to break. Whereas maybe it's more bendable, right? And bending, not breaking, right? When you use love and friendship and kindness to form your bonds, maybe that's more flexible than it is to use the brittle fear. But yeah, I mean, I thought about this too. I was thinking about, like, I teared up when Ezran brought back like a thunder of dragons, which is the plural for a group of dragons. A thunder of dragons. I thought that was super neat. I thought that was fascinating. I love this moment of like Anya and Durin coming in, and not only just Durin, but like Corvus and the baker, and coming in with like spare jelly tarts to throw at people's faces. And like I'm sitting here going like, where's your bag of jelly tarts, bro? But so it goes. But there's a different kind of bond that has formed that has enabled them to overcome this evil. And I think that this show is teaching us that those bonds are stronger, right? And what it's also teaching us is that we don't know when those bonds are going to come back and save us. Sometimes it seems like the effort that we put in all those episodes ago of saving this dragon was just like an offshoot of their kindness, but it pays dividends in the long run. And it's the same thing with all these other moments of kindness that with the baker, with like all these people, it's these smaller moments build up to pay dividends. And I think you're right to look this up, Kelly. I think this is huge.
There's also a moment while we're talking about that specific group of people coming together on the battlefield where, and I'm trying to think specifically, there's a banner and it looks like the broken chain, but I think they changed it when they come in, so it is a complete chain. So like they took the staple that was supposed to be them being the outcasts, and they put that on like their banner for their battalion. But I'm pretty sure it's a complete chain, like it's no longer broken when they come in with the other, I'm forgetting the princess who is really good at archery.
Anya, yeah.
Anya, but what's her kingdom called? Because it's her kingdom. Durin. Yeah, it's her kingdom's crest. And then the chain one is side by side with that. And I just thought that was a beautiful moment. And I didn't realize that the first time I watched it. Like I noticed it this past time.
Yeah, there's chock full of detail. Super cool. Yeah. I also kind of want to, I think this is a nice segue to point to this final moment in the episode 2 with the Dragon Queen. This is really fascinating for me because what we know of Avazandum Thunder is that Avazandum was incredibly jaded and very critical of humankind. Every time we see Avazandum, we see pretty angry dragon, right? And the queen wakes up, and I'm nervous when the queen wakes up because I'm like, oh gosh, this could go all kinds of ways. But she's like, oh, they're all hanging out together, and I'm so happy. And I'm like, something is not like that. And so I'm really curious about this for you all, because I think that we have been led a certain direction by only seeing Thunder to have this, like, of course, last 30 seconds of the episode, leaving us so hungry for 4 years. I'm sitting here going like, hello. But yeah, I'm curious about this moment for you all. Were you all surprised by the Dragon Queen's reaction? Like, what's going on?
My first reaction was perhaps it was coming more from her just overwhelming joy to be reunited with Zim, and then seeing that all of these creatures of, you know, different nations, different kingdoms are here together. And I feel like dragons have that sixth sense where they know, right, that they're not here as a threat, they're here to support, right? So maybe it's her just waking up and being so overjoyed in the fact that, you know, her child is reunited with her. But then I love what you just brought up, Ben, because it is true. It's a very interesting take on the way that we've been viewing the dragon king and queen of, do they dislike all humans, or was it more of the king who is more anxious about humans, and maybe the queen has been the opposite of that, right? Kind of that equal force, but also trying to balance each other out. And I'm ready for more backstory. 4 years is a long time. 4 years is a long time. Let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah, I was looking it up, and like, so she and Zubeir and Avizandum, they are over 1,000 years old. So they were alive when Zadia was split. So, and just like when Zadia was split, I was reading about the lore. I was getting in deep for today because I was like, I just feel like I want to know more.
Yeah, YGG.
But like when Zadia was split, the current ruler of the dragons, so I can't remember, but she basically, instead of wiping all the humans out, she decided to just banish them. So that was a kindness. So I think there are dragons that don't hate humans like entirely. Like, I'm guessing just like anything, there's like a range of, so I hope that they kind of do explain that more, because it was like she literally just saw them holding hands. She's like, this is great. This is the best thing ever.
She's like, I love love.
Yeah. When the last thing she did was send assassins after Harrow and Viren, which, I mean, like, justified. Like, not, well, I don't know if justified is the right word. Anyways, like, stuff happened on both sides. So like the last thing she did wasn't super kind, but I wonder if maybe she was somebody, she was a dragon that was more like temperate with their views on the humans.
Yeah. I don't know, but I'm excited to learn. I'm excited to learn. All right. I've asked before, but this is our last call for anything on loyalty. Any other small moments that we want to touch on before we transition? All right. Seeing none, I am going to phase us into some lovely musical things you'll enjoy it. Here we go. Welcome back. We are so excited to dive into these next two segments because we know that the polls are going to be hot after this Lynn's MVP discussion. We have been putting polls on our Facebook group and on Patreon, and that's been a little fun little experience to watch everyone beat me. So we're trying to break that streak now with me coming in first. Good news, we'll actually be able to have tiered ones. So we'll actually might have like a first, second, third, fourth place vote for our Lynn's MVP. Just as a reminder to everybody, the Lynn's MVP is the character that the four of us are going to choose, that this person models the lens the best. And that does not mean that it's like categorically good, but the best at modeling the lens. So we're talking about who's the most loyal, and then we're gonna talk about who they are and why. So is there anyone who would like to go first for their Lens MVP discussion? Okay, all right.
Okay, fine. I'll go first. Fine.
Thank you.
You can't stop me. All right. So my pick for Lens MVP is Janai. One, because she's awesome. She's got a cool sword. She looks amazing. Okay, but really, I think that she is extremely loyal to the cause once she is kind of brought into the circle of people who are all working together. When we see her first in Luxoria, she's pretty mean, right? She captures Amaya. Like, we don't like her. We're like, she's just, and then she keeps Amaya as like a prisoner. But eventually with everything that happens, she and Amaya start working together. So even though originally she hated humans, she was extremely loyal, to her queen, and to kind of preserving their, sanctum almost, to preserving their culture, their way of life. She is willing to step outside that and kind of readjust her loyalty to serving kind of the greater good of Zadia. And I think that's great because she seemed really stubborn at the beginning. But by the end, she's pledging, what's left of her troops. She's, pledging herself to stopping Viren's forces. And I think that she's the MVP.
I mean, this is a bold choice for you to pick Janai. I think that there is a lot of strong loyalty in this episode, as we discussed. And, we didn't even talk about Janai once. So bold of you to pick Janai here. I'm just saying.
I have confidence.
All right. Well, let's see how it turns out. Bold move, Cotton. All right. Who wants to go next?
I will go next. I chose Soren because he was my MVP in the episode that we did a couple back. But also, man, you gotta love Soren, right? All of the things that he's doing in this episode / this season, but the fact that he is faced with this unthinkable choice of having to pick between his dad being a villain, right, and sparing him versus having to save the king of Zadia, and just rough times. But he chooses Ez, and I'm really proud of him for his loyalty to Ezran and standing by the true king, which is, I'm pretty sure it's a paraphrase quote, but that's about what he said. While his dad is wearing the crown, but he's not viewing that physical thing as the king. He's looking at Ez being the king. So Soren is my MVP.
Yeah. So Kelly is just picking a character that she thinks is awesome, and you're just trying to ride your own coattails. So this is like, we're starting off strong. All right.
You were doing so low.
But it's okay because I still beat you, Ben, in the last one. So it's fine.
Well, that was rude. All right. Well, Rahul, you or me? Do you want to go next? Or you want me?
I'll go.
All right.
And I think it'll be tough for you to talk smack on this one. Because I chose Bait, and no one wants to talk smack on Bait. So Bait, I think he's like a really interesting character that isn't really focused a lot on. He has some moments of jealousy when Zim hatches and Ezran's spending a lot of time with him. But last couple of episodes, he's shown he's a real one. Because when Zim is scared about seeing his mom, Bait stays back. This episode, he's ride or die. He's staying with him. He gets smacked by Viren into a wall.
Does. Yeah.
And then just walks it off. Just comes back. I don't think you can get any better when it comes to loyalty than Bait.
Rahul's going for the emotional deep cut here to try and win.
That's really good.
Okay, yeah. Kelly just gave Rahul a vote by saying that. Listen, you cannot be kind during this. Like this.
It's Bait though.
Yeah, no, I Bait was a good option. But let's be real here. The true MVP for loyalty is Ezran. We were talking all episode about loyalty, and I think Ezran really takes the cake, and here's why. Ezran is the model for us this all 3 seasons, not just this episode, but all 3 seasons of being kind, and reaching out to people who need help and prioritizing people. And then we talked about dividends paying off, and by that I mean, I think I said that, but we mentioned it earlier, where all of his kindness is paying off in this episode. All the kind and good things that he has done is paying off and has built this friendship loyalty, right? That is overcoming the brittle fear loyalty that we see, which is like, I thought about choosing Claudia. I'll admit, Claudia is like fiercely loyal and almost like blindly loyal in this. So like, I think I could have won with Claudia, but y'all, brittle loyalty compared to Ezran's loyalty, which is strong. So that is my choice, and I can't wait to win this poll for you all.
You mean to come in fourth place?
You would vote for Ezran fourth out of those four?
All I'm gonna say is, where was Ezran when Rayla was frozen? You know, Bait was there. Bait was there
on a dragon fighting the battle.
This is
Dragon's
like
brief fight.
freshman year debate.
He could have melted the ice. He chose not to. I'm kidding.
Oh my god.
Ezran's
my
great.
goodness.
Ezran's great. He's no Bait.
These are all great choices. See, the thing is, Ezran can't be good at everything. I heard you say a lot, but not the word loyalty more than maybe twice. So I think that Ezran could be good at everything, but maybe this one he's not the best.
Yeah, but
the lens was not kindness, Ben.
Yeah, but kindness breeds loyalty, people. Like, come on. Okay, all right. We digress. Okay. I can't wait to win this poll. It'll come out soon. But until then, you'll just have to wait on bated breath. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to dive into our final segment. Final segment is gratitude. Gratitude, which is, there's a lot to be thankful for. Like I said, I teared up like 4 times during this episode during my rewatch. So there's so much in here. It was tough for me to pick. But anybody interested in going first for the gratitude? All right.
I will go first, mostly because I gave you a hard time about Ez being your MVP, and Ezran is who I am grateful for.
So you are going to vote for Ezran?
No, I am not, but that's fine. I can be grateful for him, and that will clear my conscience. The 2 reasons I'm specifically grateful for Ez are the interaction he has with Callum after or during the battle scene, where he sees that Callum wants to go be with Rayla and Zim, and he tells him to go. And I felt like that was one of those moments where we've seen Ez grow up, but that was the moment where I was like, wow, this kid is going to be a phenomenal leader, because he's looking at what his brother wants to do, and he's looking where he needs to go as king and seeing that they're separate places. And he's totally fine with letting Callum go. And then Callum has that moment where he's like, I'm so proud of you. And he owns it. He goes, I know. And that was just such a great moment for me. Like, I get so warm and fuzzy feelings and all of the joy with that moment. And I was like, that's right, Ezran, you are great. And I'm glad that, you own that, because you should. That's a lot of responsibility for a little kid.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so grateful for Ezran. Thank you for choosing my winner. I'm so grateful. All right. Who else are we grateful for?
I'm grateful for Queen Anya, because this kind of stems back to like even before this episode though, because she was one of the only rulers of the human kingdom that did not want to go to war, and was another, child ruler that the adults were saying, you don't know any better. You don't have enough experience. This is a mistake. Somebody needs to basically kick you out and take over, because you clearly don't know how to make decisions, the way that we want you to. And I just love that at the end that she has this opportunity to bring, back the weak links, to the battlefield and basically say, no, we're not weak. We're strong. And she's brought her own people, and they let off this huge volley of arrows. It's so satisfying. Yeah. And I just love that it's, just one of those final hour moments where she comes in and is able to, not entirely save the day, but
saves Callum's day.
Yeah, she does good work. She does some good work. And I'm just grateful for her as a character that they wrote a character like that can come back. And I hope that we see more of her in season 4.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Rahul, how about you?
I chose Callum, partly because we didn't really talk a lot about him this episode.
Yeah.
But I mean, grew wings. No Red Bull needed, and grew wings. And yeah, I think is it appropriation? We can debate back and forth, but he grew wings, proclaimed love, both pretty cool things. And he also had, I think, a really nice moment with Soren that I think was really needed for both their characters.
Yeah.
To sort of resolve that relationship that kind of hit some rocky points along the path of the show. So yeah, I think, Callum has grown a lot throughout the show. And I think this was like a really nice sort of climax for his character along this step of the show.
I thought that moment, just to take a little pause and live in this moment for a second. I this moment where like Callum thinks for about 2-3 seconds before he jumps, right? He's like, I'm gonna do it. And then we also see like freaking out. And then there's this moment of calm that I thought they animated so well. And the voice change, everything about it was just really beautiful. And I'm curious what went on in his mind in that moment. Because for me, it was almost a like letting go. Like, I'm what will be, and this is the best that I can do, and I love you. And then, or is it like, nope, love is the answer. I must say it. I'm curious, like, what's going through his mind in that moment when this spell actually works. But I don't know. There's something there. Because then, it's also interesting. I just find it really interesting that, Viren kind of like I wonder if he just passed out or something, because like Rayla's not attached to him anymore. And she like turns around and looks up. And I don't know, like what made her do that also. I had questions. But anyway, I digress.
In anticipation of book 3 of Korra being covered, it's almost a reversal of let go of your earthly tether, because he's leaning into that tether.
And I mean, interesting. Yeah.
I think he's just like, if I die today, I need to say what's on my heart. And that just happens to work. He's more like, I'm going to die. I might as well say it.
It reminded me of Harry Potter in the book 7 when he's walking into the forest to die, and he says, I am going to die, to the snitch, and that's when it allows him to open it. It's like, it's the realization and the understanding, like, this is what I'm going to do. And I feel like that's what it was. It's like, there is no other option. So it felt very similar in character to that. So yeah, really interesting moment. Maybe under a different lens, we'll talk about it more one day. But I digress. So we've had really wonderful choices so far. Ezrin, we've had Anya, now Callum. And so for me, I'm grateful for 2 characters. I'm gonna say both, but hone in on one. I'm really grateful for Grin. We see this reunion with Amaya where he is just like crying and like sobbing with her, and then he gets back into like, okay, I have to translate now, and it's just really touching, really. And I was just like, oh no, there's so much love between you two, it's wonderful. And then the person I really want to lean in on and be grateful for is Marco, which we talked about briefly earlier, but this soldier that we've been with since episode 1, right? We see an incredible journey from this person who was like, I'm like gonna kill an elf, to I'm now fighting in this war trying to save Zadia. and save the world from this evil human being that's, turning people into monsters. So I'm just really grateful to have witnessed that whole transition and to see that journey and to be a part of it. Kind of like I'm really grateful to be a part of this journey with all of you.
Aww.
No, stop. I'm not allowed to say that.
Well, I mean, I am.
Not after giving us a hard time about who our MVPs are.
Oh, I am very, very up for giving people a hard time because I lose every time, so it's fine. I can't tell if it's out of spite or if it's I'm just bad at picking people. But so it goes. Maggie says it's because I'm bad at picking people. Okay, we'll talk later. Okay, so but yeah, we've come to the end of an episode. You have all had a chance to kind of share out all your things, but this has been an incredible journey with our patrons. We have other people that kind of hide in the bushes and don't ever come out, but we thank you all for being patrons as well. We're so grateful that you are supporting this podcast and enabling this conversation to happen. We are grateful for all of our patrons, but also we're grateful to all the listeners who are just chiming in and listening to us cover the Dragon Prince. And we will be coming back to The Legend of Korra Book 3 very shortly. And so we have some guests lined up for that, and we're really excited and really hopeful that we get to continue, and it's all because you all are listening, and thank you so much. I'll also say that I have a goal recently that I have, I think I'm starting a Bending Not Breaking newsletter that I'm planning to write something for fairly regularly. It will be hit or miss. I'm not committing anything to it, but I am aiming to do probably 500 to 1,000 words a week. And put that out on the newsletter. You can find that on at BNB_pod at Substack. So that's also for patrons posted on our Patreon site, and I'm sure it will be tweeted about and sent on all the things as well once it actually starts going. So I offer that to everybody. But any final words from you all before we sign off?
Just want to say thank you, Ben, for letting us be on the podcast. It's super fun, and we love doing the live episodes. It's kind of fun to put one together for everybody to hear kind of what might go on in the live episodes. It's a little bit different when we do it just for patrons, but still, just thank you so much for facilitating this for us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
It's been good. Thank you.
All right. You heard it from them, everybody. This has been Bending Not Breaking, and our patrons supporting us, and we are grateful to be here. Until next time, be well.